Good song choice, Anthony. Excellent way to open the show. For those on the YouTube stream who don't get to hear the music that goes with our show, Anthony has chosen the song Money by Pink Floyd, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure I have the right Pink Floyd song. You know the musical fun fact about the song Money by Pink Floyd?
Before you give the fun fact, I want to let you know, I don't even know the song Pink Floyd or Money by Pink Floyd. That was the OJ For the Love of Money. But
that's where the sample, I guess, comes from.
Oh, okay. I guess now we're both on the same page then.
Now you're going to make me double check this. Money by Pink Floyd. Timing. Yeah, okay. I have my songs right and my everything right. The song Money by Pink, this is not where I thought we'd start the show. The song Money by Pink Floyd is one of the only pop songs you'll ever find in 7/4 time. So most songs are in 4/4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes you'll get 3 or 6/8, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Different bit, but yes. And then Money by Pink Floyd is in 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. That's your very random fun fact about pop music from the rock music from the 1970s, probably. That I didn't think would start our sports show today.
I think I want to play it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The reason that was a good song choice is not because it's in 7/8 time or 7/4 time, depending on how you want to phrase it. Phrase, pun intended, musical term. It's a good choice, Anthony, because there is a whole lot of money being spent today in the NFL. There is so much news. I'm literally, actually, you know what? We're going full. I don't know what time signature this is in. We can figure it out. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's in 4. So old Sam Spence on the composition. We're just going to go around the NFL to start the show. And then coming up in about 10 minutes, Logan and I talked. At this point, we wrapped up about 2 hours ago, and we missed 5 stories. But we got into the wide receivers because earlier today, DK Metcalf requested a trade. Tyler Lockett is getting released. Christian Kirk is getting released. So we talked about those guys and the receiver market because obviously that is somewhere where the Commanders, despite the Deebo Samuel deal, do not feel like they are done. So we'll get into that, my conversation with Logan here in a little bit. And then we'll take more of your calls later on in the show. But let's get everybody caught up on everything that is happening, which means closing the Google tab on Pink Floyd and getting started with the most money spent today, which is the Raiders on Max Crosby. This one kind of stinks because, man, it would have been real fun to have Max Crosby become a Washington Commander. The Raiders have been consistent that they weren't going to trade him, and today they made him the highest non-quarterback or the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. The 4-time Pro Bowler gets a 3-year, $106 million contract. It's actually $106.5, which the half doesn't feel significant until you remember that's another $500,000. And I sure would take $500,000. The extension announced without terms by the Raiders includes $91.5 million in guaranteed money, sources told ESPN's Adam Schefter. He is under contract with the Raiders through 2029. Yeah, man. Crosby now going to have an average annual value of $35.5 million. That is $500K a year more than Justin Jefferson's $35. Nick Bosa was the previous highest paid defensive guy at $34.2. My guess is that whoever signs Myles Garrett, Anthony, will be coming in around $36.
Yeah, it sounds about right. But shout out to the Raiders, and Max Crosby. He clearly wants to be in Las Vegas, and they've made it a priority to make sure they pay this guy. This is the 3rd time in 4 years that they've tweaked these contracts. So clearly he wants to be there, and they want him there.
And I feel like it's a good bet because until this season, when he decided, with them being out of it, to shut it down late and get whatever was ailing him fixed, he is not only a guy that doesn't miss games, he doesn't really miss snaps, and he plays really hard. So as long as he doesn't fall off a performance cliff, an age cliff, this feels like a good, safe bet that you got a guy that's going to be around for a bunch of more years. So Max Crosby under contract now with the Raiders through 2029. Seahawks star receiver DK Metcalf requested a trade today. The reporting on ESPN from their Seahawks writer Brady Henderson goes something like this. Made his request Wednesday after a series of conversations over the past 2 weeks. The source told Adam Schefter. The request came on the same day the Seahawks announced the release of franchise great and fellow receiver Tyler Lockett in an expected move. The Seahawks are upset that the news of Metcalf's trade request was leaked on a day the organization was celebrating Lockett's 10-year career in Seattle, a source told ESPN. The source said the team will explore a Metcalf trade, adding, "We'll do what's best for the Seahawks." He's 29. He wants a new deal. He's currently in the final year of a 3-year, $72 million extension he signed in 2022, and he's going to make about $18 million this year. Trading him before June 1st would clear nearly $10.9 million in salary cap space, but would force the Seahawks to take on $21 million in dead money this season. They could technically cut him as a post-June 1st, but I think in an ideal world, the Seahawks would be like, let's get a small extension done, and they want to keep him to play opposite of Jackson Smith and Jigba. But, yeah, DK, and I don't know whether it's the new staff or whether he thinks Geno's declining or he's just being kind of the headache that he has been for most of his career, but DK wants out of Seattle.
Craig, there are times like today, DK requesting a trade, Debo requesting a trade, and you just look back at the 2019 draft where we got Terry, and it just makes you, appreciate that guy a little bit more. Because, again, Terry isn't one of these guys that, is out here requesting trades. Like, we suck for the greater part of his
Terry
career.
McLaurin would have been well within his rights to request a trade multiple times between 2020, let's say 2022 and 2024.
And he didn't do it.
And he's just like, nope, this is where I want to be. I want to be here for the turnaround. He sensed it was coming, and he was a huge part of it, and he's a huge reason that it worked because the buy-in that he gave Dan Quinn. I mean, I heard this somewhere, but like now when you talk about Terry and DQ, it's like, oh, that's one of DQ's guys. You don't think of him as a Ron guy or a Jay guy. I remember Gruden's the one that actually was the coach when he got drafted. And then he's there for the whole Rivera era. But no, that's a Dan Quinn guy. It's an Adam Peters guy, which is why Adam's going to be talking to his agent, / probably already is, about some kind of extension. Because also he's played a lot better and been a better teammate. And no, I'm not interested in DK Metcalf, but we'll get there with Logan in just a second. Lockett's an interesting one, too. I have no idea how much he's going to make. He's still a good player. He's not what he was. But, like, as a guy that can take a top off a defense, he's a tremendous ball tracker. Definitely plays bigger than his size consistently. That's an interesting one. The other big one that happened today, I guess there's two more pretty significant ones. With the two Super Bowl teams. The Eagles are bringing back Zach Baun, 3 years, $51 million. I mean, first of all, congratulations to Zach Baun, man. This dude last year signed like a $1 million one-year deal. He was a backup special teams guy that was coming from New Orleans to Philly, and then he was a Defensive Player of the Year finalist who just made himself $34 million guaranteed. There's an additional $1.5 million in incentives and escalators, according to Adam Schefter's reporting. Making Baun one of the highest paid linebackers in the NFL. Total could be as high as 3-year, $51 million. Just a completely, it was last year's 1 year, $3.5 million to be a rotational edge rusher and special teams guy. Now he's key to an inside linebacker. This is huge. He's only 28, so if he plays really well the next couple of years, he could get paid again. Like, this dude was probably one bad year from being out of the NFL. When you're a rotational guy and special teams guy, you're always 1 year away from being out of the NFL. Now, he's this. Congratulations to Zach Baun, even though it absolutely stinks that he's going to be back with the Eagles and they're going to be nasty again.
Yeah, it does stink that he's going to be back with the Eagles. But, Craig, how does Howie do it, man? Like, he's getting $34 million at signing, so does that mean the next 3 years it's just going to be like 5.5 against the cap or something like that? Like, I truly don't know how he does this, man.
I mean, what they do a lot with void years, which is the biggest thing. So, like, it's 3 real years, and then, but technically the contract will have some money in it for 5, and they're willing to take on the low dead cap money at the end, and put themselves in a put some money in the future, because they can get the lower numbers right now. But if you always do that, then you can always have the now number lower, and you have room for the extra dead money.
Yeah.
So let me see if his contract is up on like Spotrac or something yet.
Howie, man, he's working. Saquon.
He does. But the other way they can do it is because to do that, you have to do a lot of money in bonuses, which gets paid in cash now. And that's where most owners are like, no, we're not going to do a ton of money in bonuses. And yeah, it's not on Spotrac yet. No details on the signing bonus, just 3 for 51, average 17, total 34. But what you do is you pay a bunch of money now to the player. He's happy because he gets cash. Then, let's say it's a 3-year deal, but 2 void years on the back end. Now that, let's say it's $20 million is bonus money of this 34 guaranteed.
Yep.
You have a 7 base, a non-guaranteed 3rd year, and then $20 million in a signing bonus. Okay, well that if you spread that over 3 years, it's a little less than $7 million, right? Because 21 divided by 3 would be 7.
Yep.
If you do it over 5 years, well, now that's only $4 million. But you have $4 million in dead cap money in those final 2 void years. So because they're willing to do some of that bonus pushing and restructuring and restructure bonus here and whatever, and pay the cash now, then you can get away with doing it the way they do it. So it's Howie, but it's also Jeffrey Lurie, their owner.
Yeah.
Who deserves a ton of credit. Last but not least, real quick on the let's get you all caught up on the news before we provide a bunch of analysis on it. The other Super Bowl team, the Kansas City Chiefs, kind of everyone raised an eyebrow when they franchised Trey Smith, their guard, and was like, oh, how are they going to afford that? Because they traded their other guard. They traded Joe Thuney today to the Chicago Bears. Of course, Thuney played left guard for them at an all-pro level for multiple years on their Super Bowl winning teams, and then this year actually kicked out to left tackle when they had all kinds of failures at left tackle. They traded him to the Bears for a 4th-round pick. Entering the final year of his deal, I think this is super interesting for both sides. You see Chicago being like, we got to get better on the O-line right now, and we're willing to do expensive stuff there because we have a rookie quarterback contract. It's similar to what Carolina did last year to be like, we got to give Bryce Young a chance. And you saw it pay off at the end of last year for Carolina. We'll see if that can work for Caleb in Chicago. But for Kansas City now, they got to figure out their left guard situation, and they got to hope that Kingsley Suamatia, the left tackle they took in last year's draft, can solve their left tackle problem. So a lot of things, a lot of moving parts happening around the NFL, and we will obviously keep our eye on more potentially to come, and certainly the Commanders could be a part of that. Look for like a Jeremy Chin, a Zach Ertz, someone like that to potentially re-sign before Monday. When we get back, though, the receivers, any of the big 3 that got released today, the 2 that we mentioned for Seattle, DK requesting the trade, Lockett getting released, or Christian Kirk, who has a long history with Cliff Kingsbury. He got released by the Jags today. Any interest for those guys in Washington? Logan and I discussed, and we'll play it for you next on The Hoffman Show. A Song in 7. It's the Hoffman Show. If you don't get the reference, or you don't know what I'm talking about, shouldn't have been late to the show today. I didn't tell you to be late. Tell your boss you got to go. Show starts at 4. Or Russell finished his show late, so we even gave you an extra 3 minutes. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're full of inside jokes, and we're also full of insight and analysis on the Commanders and what they should be doing over these next couple of months. It's team building season, and teams around the NFL are getting ready for the start of the league here. Earlier today, Logan and I caught up to preview free agency, and what it turned into to start was a reaction to all the breaking news on the receiver market and whether or not the Commanders should keep fishing where they've already caught the big one in Deebo Samuel. So without further ado, here's that conversation before it becomes even more dated than it already is. But no, in all seriousness, really good stuff on DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Christian Kirk, and whether Washington should pursue any of those 3 receivers. Let's start off with the Metcalf one first because, frankly, he's the biggest lightning rod, and it's the one that is most recent. He has now requested a trade, according to Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, and I have made my feelings on DK Metcalf quite clear, Logan, on the radio show. I am so far beyond not interested in having DK Metcalf be a Washington Commander. I realize the appeal, but I'm not interested for reasons that I can get into. But before I go on my diatribe to whatever extent version it's going to happen today, what are your thoughts on DK Metcalf, specifically for Washington?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I like good football players. I like playmakers and understand why people are drawn to that. He's one of those guys to me that when you look at him, he's got everything physically that you could possibly want. I mean, he's one of one. He's incredibly fast. He's big. He's got long arms. He plays with decent physicality. I think the one thing I would say is that I think the numbers and the stuff that surround him, the hype around his name, probably lead fans to be more excited about him than they probably should be. And what I mean by that is he is a big guy. He doesn't always play like a big guy. He doesn't run the best routes. He's not great in and out of his cuts. He's kind of a limited route tree. And I think back to when he's been most successful and he's running, goes and deep posts. And I do think if he were to come to Washington, he would bring an element that would be great. He would be really nice to have in terms of the ability, kind of like what Tyreek Hill did when he was in Kansas City, the ability to kind of stretch you vertically to open up horizontal windows, right? And that would allow Terry to do more Terry stuff, run these deep crossers, run the deep dig, run the go. He could still do all that stuff, but I think it would give Terry some flexibility that he hasn't had here in a while because of the vertical juice that DK Metcalf brings. Now, my issue is that he's making $20 million a year or whatever he's making, whatever that number is. So you're trading for the contract. He probably wants an extension. And if you're going to utilize him that way to maximize Terry, why not draft a younger player that is a similar skill set? I think about Thornton from Tennessee. He's 6'5", he's 210. He ran a 4.3 at the combine. He's got decent length. He's got 33-inch arms. He's a big guy too. And what he's good at? He's good at running posts and goes. But you know how much he's going to cost you? Probably a 3rd-round draft pick, maybe a 4th-round draft pick. And that, to me, in terms of cost and roster construction, is probably much more valuable long-term to the team. So that's kind of where I've fallen. And I think there's this again, I like DK. I enjoy watching him probably from 3 years ago better than I did over the last 2 years. And I think that speaks to kind of how he's changed and some of his limitations as a route runner and as a player. That doesn't mean he doesn't add value. It's just, what value are you looking for? And is that value worth the price tag? And I'm going to say this too, also kind of the headache, I guess is the word I'm going to use, kind of the person, right? So to me, I understand that's exciting and fans get excited. I understand why they're excited. And I understand schematically why it would be a nice ad. But I'm also kind of I feel like there's easier ways, maybe better ways to get that done.
Far more efficient ways that come with far less of a headache and far less of a price tag. Yeah. And this is where it's really hard to talk about players like DK Metcalf. Because DK Metcalf is a really good NFL football player who makes your offense in a vacuum better. Mm-hmm. He's also not worth taking on, worth both in the contractual value and the potential headache. And that is just something that Washington can do better in other places. And so, again, it's not that DK Metcalf isn't a good football player, but he's not a 6'4" size guy like he is on paper. It's just not who he is. And in fact, I would tell you he's kind of a worse version of Terry McLaurin. Like he's a guy like the role that Terry has taken on. Now Terry, I think, has improved greatly over the years, and you can see that in the catch numbers and things. Where DK had the one monster season in 2022, he was targeted 141 times and got 90 catches for just over 1,000 yards. The last 2 seasons, he's got 66 catches a season, and sure, 2 years ago, it was for 1,100 yards. Good deep ball season. Also, I think people think that he's like underrated because they think Geno Smith isn't very good, and that's not remotely true.
Yeah.
Like Geno's a really high level, like top half level NFL quarterback. So no, like he's playing with a pro. Would he be better with Jaden Daniels? Of course, but he's played with a pretty darn good quarterback. And so if you're telling me that you need someone to complement Terry, I don't want essentially a worse version of Terry, and that's before you get to the headache side of it. So again, is DK Metcalf a good football player? Yes. Don't come in my mentions. Don't come in my comments saying you said DK sucks. I didn't say DK sucks. I said he's not worth bringing to Washington based off of where they are in terms of their resource allocation, what it would take, and what they are trying to build in their locker room. That's where I'm at on DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. And is there value? Yes. I just think it's about, is it worth it? Is it worth the other stuff? And if he was playing, and again, I think, just go watch the film. Like, he's not the most detailed route runner. He's not, going to win all these 50-50 contested catches like you think he would. He doesn't track the ball super well. Like, he's a big explosive dude. And big explosive people, you want them on your team because they create space. And I think that's what he would be doing. And again, we've seen how explosive he can be with the ball in his hands. It's just not with the same regularity as some of these other top guys. Like I love the height, weight, speed. Again, I love some of the physical stuff you see as a blocker, but again, it's not consistent enough for me right now. And again, it may be a change of scenery is what you want, but I don't know if I want to bet on that. And I think when you look at what Adam Peters has done so well is he's identified people that fit the Washington culture. This pending trade, as reported by Adam Schefter, obviously for Deebo Samuel, like it makes a lot of sense to me, even though Deebo has some of the same limitations, as a route runner. Like, there's no doubt about the man's competitiveness and how he's going to fit with this team. So I think that's another element here that I think fans often overlook. And again, it's if you were to sign here, I'd be happy. But I also understand that, like, to me, it probably shouldn't be the priority that I think a lot of fans at least have presented to me.
No, for sure. And like, again, Deebo's a guy that's a good complementary piece because he does the stuff that Terry doesn't do. And like Terry can do everything. Terry's an elite player. That's kind of the nature of it. But like, where's Terry at his best? Getting vertical down the field, using that speed. And then what kind of space does that create underneath? A space for like good zone players, which is what they did last year, right? Guys like Olamide Zaccheaus, etc. Except for the Deebo, when he's remotely healthy, is the deluxe version of that. So it fits of like, okay, Deebo's not your guy that's going to beat man-to-man coverage. Terry's your guy for that, and then that's also why you bring back Zach Ertz. Those are your two guys on 3rd and 7. Got to have it. Those are my primary guys. But a guy like Deebo on 1st and 2nd down can take advantage of that space, get in those spaces, catch the ball, and then make a guy miss. And now you've generated both an easy button and an explosive play at the same time, which is kind of a goal of NFL offense. As far as a speed guy, though, that could loosen up defenses in a way for Terry, what do we think about Tyler Lockett? He's a really interesting guy because he's been an elite, talk about like the ability to track the football deep. He's been one of the best at that. He and Russell Wilson, the connection they had earlier in their careers was incredible. But he's now going to be entering his age 33 season. Last season, he played in all 17 games, was targeted 74 times, had 49 catches for 600 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Where I know this is fresh, so you haven't done like any kind of deep film dive on Tyler Lockett, but the idea of Tyler Lockett, does that intrigue you at all?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Tyler Lockett. I think he does the route running stuff of the receiver position at a high level. I think the thing you lose with him a little bit is the kind of down to down competitiveness. And I don't want to say he's not a competitor, but I just think he's 33 years old. He's not going to kind of play super hard all the time. He's not going to block the same way he used to. He gets down, he doesn't fight for those extra yards. If they were to get him in here at the right number, that's the thing about free agency and seeing some of these good players get cut. I think it's the same thing you saw like last year with Austin Eckler, for example, right? He's a free agent. You get him at a good value. He kind of outperforms the value of his contract. But if you were to bring him at a number that he was playing at the year prior, it wouldn't work, right? It just would be like, this isn't what this is not that the value isn't there. And so maybe if you get him at a number that feels right for your team and your organization, And again, he's a good football player. Like that's the thing. And it's the same thing with DK, honestly. Like if DK came in and he's like, yeah, I'll play here for 10, like great. Like that's exactly what you want.
Totally different conversation.
Totally different conversation. I think that's the way I feel about Tyler Lockett too. If you can get him in here at a and maybe it's 15 for Tyler Lockett because he's a little bit more diverse, but that's kind of how I feel. It's like I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze at the contract number that he wants. And so that's where like other names that have been cut are a little bit more interesting to me at this point, because I think they have more tread on the tire. I think they've got more vertical juice. I think they have more kind of competitive toughness at this point. And again, that's not to say Tyler Lockett's not a tough football player. Just stylistically, in order to play 17 games at a smaller body size, he can't do some of the things you need him to do, or that he would need to do in this offense.
For sure. And like Tyler Lockett might be worth $15 million. I would not, if I was Adam Peters, pay Tyler Lockett $15 million because you're already going to extend Terry. You're paying Debo 17 for this year. Like it's not that like the Debo contract they can take on. They have plenty of room. I told this to a caller yesterday. I was like, there's no guy that they're not going to be able to afford because they're paying Debo Samuel 17. Even in an ideal world, Debo at this point is more of like a $14-15 million player. That extra $2, $3, $4 million is probably not going to hurt you. But if you double down on that again in that receiver room, not to mention you need space for some young guys to get in there and develop, because Debo might be a 1 year, if not, he's probably a 2 or 3 year guy at absolute most. Like you need space on this roster for younger guys. So if Tyler Lockett is suddenly available for $5 million, okay, well, hell yeah, I want to have that discussion. But if he's going to be going and getting $15 million, that's a different story. Last guy that I want to talk about in this realm, though, is maybe the guy that is most intriguing for a number of reasons, and that's Christian Kirk. I would probably be more interested this time last week before the Debo trade, because they both are primarily slot players in terms of alignment. But Christian Kirk has a history with Cliff Kingsbury. He's got some juice. He's a little bit younger. He's not young, but he's younger than Lockett. How interested are you or not, and what kind of number will we be talking about to be interested in Christian Kirk?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in Christian Kirk, and I don't know numbers necessarily. I'd have to look at the market in terms of free agency, but I really think he has tremendous value. I think he does a great job winning from the slot. He wins in a more like conventional, fluid way than Debo does. Obviously, he does not the yards after catch monster that Debo is, but I think that's something that I look at and I'm like, he plays the receiver position the way you want him to play it, like with great fundamentals, great cut technique, attacks the football, good hands, can win multiple ways, can play multiple spots. I do kind of feel some of your same consternation or some of your same reservation, because it's like, I think he's at his best when he's lining up in multiple spots, which is kind of what Debo's role would be. Do I think he can play outside? Yes. But do I think you're kind of not getting the best version of Christian Kirk if you do that? That's also yes. So I think he's tremendous. I think he's physical. I think he's smart. I think he's intuitive. All of those things are true. But again, like, what's the role look like now here? Is he kind of your true Z or your true 2 here? And he can survive there kind of in the same way that Zacchaeus did. And he's got a little bit more juice than Zacchaeus, a little bit more versatility, but it just seems like he would be asking for, kind of a big payday or more money than you'd be willing to worth for a guy that's not going to be able to be maximized because of Debo's positioning in the offense. And again, this is something that's important to put out. With Debo, you still need a true slot. You still need a true like win on third down slot guy. And so maybe he could be that. But again, you can't have two guys in the slot that are making over $10 million is kind of my view on it. And I think Christian Kirk's market, based on what he did, maybe not this year, but the year prior, should be above $10 million. It's kind of my initial gut reaction. And that's not knowing a lot about the receiver market at the moment.
Yeah, this will be, which by the way, the receiver market could be all over the freaking place this year. This feels, I was having this discussion with someone the other day, like this feels like the kind of the weirdest free agent market I can remember in the last couple of years. Like there are guys that you can tell me they can make $5 million, they can make $15 million, and I would be like, sure, fine. Oh, that guy making 25, sure, why not? Because especially offensively, there just aren't a lot of dudes out there. But we'll get more to that in just a second. Just for some context on Kirk, and frankly on all these guys, Debo included. Kirk last year only played 8 games. He was probably going to get traded at the deadline, maybe even to Washington, and then he got hurt right before. I think it was a shoulder or a collarbone or something. At the time, he had 379 yards, was averaging over 14 yards a reception. The year prior, 12 games, 787. Year prior to that in Jacksonville, 84 catches, 1,100 yards. And then the year before that was his last one in Jacksonville with Cliff, 982 yards. So he has been on pace, if he can just stay healthy these last couple of years, to be a damn near 1,000-yard receiver. But I think it's important to point out, like, Zach Ertz was the second leading receiver on this team last year, and he was about 650 yards. Debo's down year last year included more receiving yards than Zach Ertz. Like, the number of receptions, I think, was about the same as well. They were kind of in the same range, but it was definitively above, the second best wide receiver on this team, which I think was OZ. I think was the next highest guy. I can look it up in a second. Obviously, Diami came on strong at the end. Noah misses the time, whatever. But like, all of these guys that we're talking about would be upgrades. But I think the thing that you have to understand / consider / factor in is the value. Contract wise, not to mention what opportunities are you blocking for younger players to develop. Luke McCaffrey, but also potential draft picks this year that you don't know yet. You don't know if Matthew Golden is going to be available for you at 29 or someone else in the second round. You just don't know when you're going through the free agency thing, but you do kind of have an ideal range of spending for each position group each year. And some of these guys, while they would be upgrades, probably push you above that level. And maybe a little bit above that level is okay because of Jaden's contract. Quarterback is going to be so much less expensive, but there are limits. And as we've talked about a ton, there are so many holes to fill, even if it's with its re-signings, that $80 million will disappear semi-quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's always so interesting that people get infatuated with receivers because to me, I think the move in free agency is probably more along the offensive line or defensive line. Like, that's where I would be kind of aiming, specifically on the offensive line. And so, again, like, if you can get a playmaker at the right price, kind of in that second or third wave of free agency, and I think they're re-signed some of the guys that were here, and I think that's the smart, right, correct move moving forward. But I keep thinking, like, if there's anything that needs to be taken care of in free agency, it's probably the offensive line somehow. Because again, like, you look at the draft, like, look what's coming around the corner, right? The offensive line is very weak in this class. And we've talked about on the show a couple developmental prospects. You say, oh, we can get that guy in here and have him sit and develop, and he can maybe become a starter. Maybe it's week 6, maybe it's week 7, maybe it's a year from now, whatever. And there are guys like that. But I think that's an important distinction. And with the receiver, there are guys in the second, third, fourth round, maybe in the 5th round. I really think like the value in receiver this year is probably between the 2nd and the 5th round that I think could come in and play in a role like the one you're describing, one where you're kind of offsetting Terry's ability, you're offsetting what Debo does, you're kind of a friendly target. I think about Higgins from Iowa State, just as an example, kind of a bigger body guy who tests well, good fundamental route runner, has the potential to develop into something more, but is right now just a very solid football player and kind of offsets the group. And I think a lot of people are going to be targeting that type of player, but that's just an example. So with the receiver, I'm always like, man, there's so many plentiful options. Even though this is a down year for receiver, there's a lot of really good football players that you feel like could make this team better. So I don't want to go out and spend a ton of money necessarily, right, to kind of fill this room out when maybe I can get a plus free agent, like that's maybe the second wave, third wave of free agency, like even re-signing OZ, look at what he did last year and how talented he was. And then, so that's where like this gets a little bit, I understand why fans talk about it this way, but that's one where I'm like, you can find a receiver. You can get a receiver that's going to be good. I don't know if you need to overpay when I think there's other positions where I would try to prioritize.
Today's lesson from Professor Paulson: do not get distracted by the shiny objects. Who else is in free agency? We answer that question next, then we get into some of the options that may exist in the draft before the end of this episode of Take Command. All right, if you want the full episode of Take Command, including more breakdown of the free agents available, as well as a look at Dane Brugler's latest mock draft and why we picked that one out to discuss, because it was really interesting. A full episode of Take Command will be in your feeds tomorrow morning, but that exclusive look or exclusive listen here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, your thoughts. That's my thoughts. That's Logan's thoughts on these receivers. Any one of those? Christian Kirk, DK Metcalf. Oh, God, the DK calls are going to come, aren't they? Tyler Lockett that you're interested in, 301-230-0980. We'll take your calls before the end of the hour. Plus, in 3 minutes, a look at what's trending. We got time for a few calls. We got time for a few more after we talk to Chris Noi coming up at 5 o'clock. I haven't checked in with him in a long time, but Maryland, Michigan tonight here on the team at 980. 6 p.m. is the pregame, 6:30 tip-off. So Terps have had they've had an interesting couple of weeks, Ant, to say the least.
They have indeed. Big game, but nobody expected Maryland to be here. So the fact that they're doing what they're doing, like testament to Coach Willard, also testament to Derek Queen, who's shown up and shown out, and then also my man Rodney Rice, transfer from Virginia Tech. So
yeah, so they've
got a whole bunch of transfers actually.
Yeah,
Gillespie.
I mean, it's crazy how quickly you can remake a team, and Maryland's done a heck of a job of doing that. You can either complain about the transfer thing, or you can make the most of it. And the teams that have embraced it are some of the best in college basketball, and the other ones are not. So, or their coaches are like retiring, which I get that too. Be like, this is not the system that I know how to be good in. TV is going to pay me how much money? Sick. But we'll talk to Coach Noi coming up in just a few to preview that game tonight. So, Anthony, you heard Logan and I talk about the receiver situation. Any of those guys intrigue you in terms of Kirk, Lockett, or DK?
I mean, Christian Kirk sort of kind of intrigues me just because he already got his money a couple of years ago. He's fairly young.
Certainly younger than the other two.
Yeah, and I think he could really be a nice compliment here in Washington. Like, he has familiarity with Cliff Kingsbury already. So I think he intrigues me the most out of those other two. Because Lockett is just like a little bit older, but he is a short-handed guy. And DK, yeah, I'm off of DK.
You're off of just to be clear, you said off of DK, not all for DK.
Off.
Okay, excellent. You can come to work tomorrow because I'm ready to scream at anybody who wants DK. And the fact that Logan agrees with me so vehemently makes me feel better about it. As I said on the Take a Man clip that we played, I am more interested in Kirk a week ago than I am right now, just because, depending on what the price tag is. Because Debo and Kirk, like, they're not the same player, but they are similar enough in terms of their alignments and like some of the stuff that you would do with them as receivers that it's hard to play them together, I guess is kind of what I would say. Is can you line one of them up outside, one of them inside, and have those two and Terry be your receivers and 11 personnel? Yeah, you could. I don't know that that's actually the best complementary skill sets. Let's go to Jason. Jason, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, Craig? How you doing?
Good, Jason. Thanks for calling in.
Appreciate it. Out of all those receivers, I'm big on Christian Kirk. I like the guy. I think he fits the mold of what we need. A guy that's kind of like an up-and-coming, proven but still young veteran. And the way I see Jaden, Jaden is to me an elevator. So what I mean by that, think about how like Steve Nash elevated the Suns, elevated the guys around him. I see Jaden that same way. So I don't think we need big names to get this production. I see we could get solid names that Jaden can elevate and click with the scheme. I feel like Christian Kirk definitely identifies with that. And also, I think he'd be good on like a one-year T-prove-it deal. And I believe with that combination of him, Debo, and Terry, along with whoever they pick up in free agency, it will make our offense just that much more explosive next year. But I'm really feeling Christian Kirk.
Yeah, Jason, I agree with you. I wonder, like, what's the cost? Thanks for the call. And if you tell me that I can get Christian Kirk for less than $10 million on a prove-it deal, even if it's incentive laden, like, hey, man, you go get 1,000 yards, you can have 15. You can have whatever. That's fine. Anything more than that, like, it's too much money in the receiver room. And I know that they can probably bring Terry's number down if they sign him to an extension for this year. I know that Debo is a one-year deal. But the other thing is, if I have a young quarterback, I do want to make sure that I have some guys that can grow with him. And now maybe you see Kirk, you never want to like say, oh, this is going to be the guy for the next 10 years, right? Because it's just the league's too unpredictable. If you can tell me I can get 3 years out of someone, I'm pretty psyched about it. And Kirk is still young enough that that's on the table for him. So maybe Kirk is a guy that you sign to a multi-year deal if you can get him to agree to it low and be like, and maybe there's a escalator for year two. Hey, man, you play 15 games in year one. What initially is a 2-year, $10 million deal becomes, $15 million guaranteed for next year. So I don't know if that's even the rules around what is and isn't legal in terms of incentives are funky, but something like that. Like if you can go out and play and earn a big second year and have that laid out as opposed to having to then hit the market again and try to get it, like I'm all for that. But I do think it's important to remember, like, we need to leave room for some draftable guys. You need to leave room to make sure that these guys can actually play together. And the Debo-Kirk crossover is one that I think is maybe flying a little too close to the sun on some of that stuff to actually get the best out of both guys. All right, if you want to call in now, we can take some more calls coming up at 5:15 slash 5:30 on through the rest of the show after we talk to Coach Naki. You're just going to have to wait on hold for a second. If not, call back in 15 minutes. That's totally up to you. But we will get back to more football and more receiver talk coming up in just a few minutes. But Michigan, Maryland tonight's our top story as we're off the air at 6. And so we're going to talk about that matchup with Chris Naki next here on your home for Maryland basketball, the Team 980. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Turtles playing basketball tonight. They'll be fending off Wolverines up in Ann Arbor. And that is today's top story because they're knocking us off the air early. Yeah, you know it's a big game. If we're like, all right, fine, you start your pregame at 6 o'clock for your 6:30 tip-off. So let's go to Ann Arbor for today's edition of Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
We'll get back to the Commanders wide receiver market in 15, but right now, welcome back our old friend, Chris Noi. Coach, how's it going?
Good, man. It's been a minute. How you been?
It has been a minute. Sorry about that. I don't know if you heard, but the Commanders were good this year, and they've taken up a lot of our time.
You know what? I was with them the whole way, man. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and luckily, you're traveling around the country with a pretty good basketball team, too. Maryland, 13th in the Associated Press poll as we steamroll towards the Big Ten tournament next week. They're at Michigan tonight, 17th in the AP poll. And Chris, I'd like to start just asking where you think both teams are mentally. Maryland had that brutal stretch with over the last couple of weeks of losing on multiple buzzer beaters. Then they finally stemmed the tide this weekend against Penn State. And then Michigan's coming off a pretty bad loss themselves. Where do you think these two teams are mentally going into this matchup tonight?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at this point in time, Craig, you tend to be pretty resilient by the time March rolls around. It's a league that just beats the crap out of each other for most, for the better part of a couple of months plus. And you learn to sort of roll with the punches. Some of them are particular, you referenced some of the gut punches the Terps have had. And, Michigan has been pretty good in close games, but they've been it's hard to believe that they've been blown out of a handful of games where you wouldn't have expected it because it's a really talented group. I think both teams, here's what's on the line tonight. The 2 seed in this, I think Michigan State is going to be the clear 1 seed going into Indianapolis next week. But right now, Maryland, depending upon what happens in the next 4 days, could finish between 2nd and 7th. So that's a big range. And there's a lot on the line because if you get, the 1 through 4, you get the double bye. It means a lot. You don't have to play till Friday. So there's a lot to play for. The 2 seed would be just a hellacious accomplishment. They started 1-3 in the league and now sitting 12-6. It's been a really good, as you mentioned, about 7-week run here.
For sure. As far as Michigan goes, pair of front court players, both over 7 feet tall. How do the Terps deal with that size tonight against the Wolverines?
Yeah, we got a couple of those ourselves. They're not 7 feet tall, but they're both good, accomplished players, and Derek Queen and Julian Reese. So the one guy who's just a load is Vlad Golden, who came in with Dusty May from, transferred in from Florida Atlantic, and he can bury you in the paint and really, make your life miserable. So there's a lot to bite off. Those two guys are really talented. I think they'll both be NBA players. But again, the Maryland's guys have been playing really well of late. We've learned, sometimes through failure, how to win on the road. We've been a much better road team over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and in large part due to really good guard play. So, you got the 2 big guys, but we got a couple of them as well, and they're going to have to deal with us.
Chris Noi with us here on the Hoffman Show, of course, analyst for the Maryland Sports Network, Coach and Johnny and the whole gang on the air at 6 o'clock tonight. 6:30 is your tip-off from Ann Arbor, where you mentioned, Maryland's been a good road team this season, especially over these last couple of weeks, but they've not won in Ann Arbor. I just read this, Chris, if I have this right, 2017. What has been the big bugaboo about how Michigan has played over that stretch where Maryland just has not been able to beat them at Ann Arbor?
This league is filled with really tough venues, Craig, and this isn't like Mackey Arena where they're breathing down your neck, but they've had a bunch of good players in that period of time. John Beilein really had it going here. They had a couple Final Four teams, and, we had to deal with a lot of talented guys, at Michigan, and there were plenty of teams that didn't have a whole lot of success up here. It's not exclusive to Maryland. We did have a couple of chances. I remember one game, Terps were up by 1. They hit a shot at the buzzer after. It looked like Kevin Herter had won the game for the Terps. That would have been around 2019, maybe something like that. But we just faced some really good Michigan clubs with some talented dudes on there.
when you look at this Maryland team this year, kind of bigger picture as we head towards the Big Ten tournament next week, you know, Coach Willard's done a fantastic job in the transfer portal, but also you got some guys coming back. How impressive have you been in how he's been able to pull this group together with some continuity, which feels like something that nobody has in college basketball these days, and some of these new guys coming in that have been able to assimilate fairly quickly to what he wants them to do?
Yeah, you know, you can no longer have a 3-year plan, right? It's just a 1-year deal. And it's not just the assimilation. I think one of the things that you have to really appreciate is he went out and found guys whose skill sets really match each other, you know, and there's a great chemistry amongst those skill sets. So, you know, and then he's got coachable guys. He went out and found the right attitudes, I think. He's also had the continued maturation of Julian Reese, who is doing things that we haven't seen him done and haven't seen him do in the previous 3 seasons. And he's come a long, long way, and he's bringing along Derek Queen with him. You know, they have a nice relationship, and if you see one on the road, you see the other on the road. And you know, winning, you know, it's the chicken or the egg thing. What does winning come first, or does chemistry come first? You know, and it's one of those things, you know it when you see it. And these guys are just playing with a lot of confidence. And I'm anxious to see what we do tonight, what this team play. You know, I expect the team will play very well, but again, there's a lot on the line for both teams.
I think confidence can be so hard sometimes in basketball because, you know, if your offense runs through one guy and the other guys aren't getting their numbers, can they stay involved? Are they ready? You know, hey, stay ready. Stay ready. How many times do you as a coach tell someone, hey, we need you to be ready when your time comes? But it's like, yeah, coach, I haven't touched the ball in 3 weeks. So good luck with that. They got, what is this, 5 guys in double figures this year? Like, how have they been able to run a system that has been able to stay as balanced over the course of this long season as it has?
Yeah, part of it is having inherently unselfish guys. Part of it is having the right point guard who's distributing, and they've had just a tremendous year out of Jacoby Gillespie, who's transferred in from Belmont. He's been fantastic. But to your point, what just happened at Penn State, you know, Rodney Rice had a really completely forgettable game. I think at one point he was 1 for 10, 1 for 11, maybe 1 for 12. But he kept his head in the game and hit the game winner, you know, in the last 20 seconds of the game. So he did the same thing against Indiana. He's made big shot after big shot. So, yeah, they just sort of complement each other. I think they all like playing together. The ball doesn't stick anymore. Last year we had Jameer Young, and he did everything for this team because he had to. There wasn't enough talent around him, and now there's talent at every position, and it's a very unselfish group.
Chris, if we scope out on college basketball, I saw something the other day that I thought was interesting, and I was actually like, I hadn't really thought about it, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, why is that? This feels like a year in college basketball that there should be a lot more buzz. There's a ton of teams that are good. There's a ton of teams that are going to have a chance. And you also have a genuine generational superstar in Cooper Flagg at Duke, of all places, that feels like there should be more, I guess, attention on college basketball. And there's just not. Like, do you think that there's a reason for that? Is this just the new normal? Like, has the sports hierarchy shifted? Like, what do you make of I know you're at the center of it, so it's hard because it is your world that you live in. But when you look at the national attention, considering the season that men's college basketball is having, does it feel, I guess off is the best word I can think of to you at all?
Yeah, not so much to me, but I will tell you this. On that note, you know, one of the things that we've seen, and Maryland got a lot of publicity a couple of weeks ago because, you know, they were struggling getting students to games regularly, and there was a lot of ink about that and a lot of, you know, hand-wringing about that. That's something we've seen across the board in a lot of arenas in the Big Ten. And these are towns, Craig, where these games are the show in town, you know, and it's what people center their days around. And yet we've seen empty seats in a lot of different arenas, and I'm not sure what the reason is. You know, my daughter, who's in the business, tells me that, you know, today's college students are yesterday's COVID shut-ins, and they just, you know, they just don't, you know, they don't socialize like people used to at that age. But
totally makes sense.
To your point, Craig, I always hope springs eternal here. I think that when March rolls around, when that first weekend rolls around in the tournament, and you get, you know, complete bedlam, and people are talking about it everywhere the next day at work, and every secretary is winning the office pool. I think you get the 3 weeks where everybody's eyes are on it, and I think that's it's obviously it's the high point of the season. It's the high point of it's great. I mean, you have 4 weeks where you have 3 weeks NCAA basketball and then the Masters. That's a pretty good month of sports right there. So I again, hope springs eternal, and I think that you'll get plenty of eyes and attention on it with the tournament upcoming.
Yeah, for sure. I think the COVID point is really good, and it's something that we can almost forget because we're now so many years removed of it. But that is something that will affect all of us that lived through it. It will affect us in some ways, and for young people or people that were young, especially during it, for the rest of our lives, it's just like basic social science. And then you have kind of, I think, the deterioration of brands in college basketball because of the way I am for kids being able to transfer, but it does ruin the continuity and kind of some of the fandom and being able to year over year, kind of grow with the team. And it's such undeniably a business now that I just wonder long term kind of where, especially men's college basketball, sits in the hierarchy.
I hear you, and I am for these guys getting paid, but I'm not for them getting paid without any governor in place, without any sort of there's no reasonable structure. So as to maintain a competitive balance of some kind, and until there is, people are always going to, that's what you're going to get. People are going to tune in for the NCAA tournament and nothing else.
For sure. And it's like, I mean, the great players are going to move. Gino, I'm sure you saw this. Gino Auriemma asked about which one of his players would have benefited the most from NIL. And he goes, Taurasi would have transferred 4 times to the highest bidder every year. So, it's unfettered capitalism, but that doesn't necessarily mean the best thing for the success of the sport, even if it's a short-term boon for the players that are signing the NIL deals. Chris, this was great as always, man. Enjoy the heck out of the game tonight, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you over the next month as the tournament gets going.
All right, thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
Chris Noi with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we can get back into the Commanders in this free agent market. Is there anybody that you have circled that you think Washington should pursue that you want to run by me? 301-230-0980. We're talking Commanders free agency as we're less than a week out. Next on the Hoffman Show. Call time, 301-230-0980 is our phone number. You can call in and let us know who you would like to see the Commanders pursue. NFL free agency around the corner. Teams making trades like the Bears. They're like, we need guards. We need people to protect Caleb Williams. So they traded for not one, not two. They gave up their 4th and their 6th round pick for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson. You got DK Metcalf requesting a trade in Seattle, so they're going to work on that. New names being added to the free agent pool. We still don't have a Cooper Kupp deal. So there's receiver, non-receiver stuff, all kinds of potential options. Zach Baun off the board now. Logan literally said to me earlier today, he's like, man, if they could get Zach Baun, that would be sick. And then an hour later, the Eagles re-signed him. There goes that dream. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. All right, let's go to Rodney. Rodney, who is it that you would like the Commanders to pursue?
Hey, Greg, thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
Long time listener, first time caller. For me, I know he's not a free agent, but it's got to be DK Metcalf. Big, fast, strong. He can go over the middle or take you deep. Man, he'd be excellent with Debo and Scary Terry. Oh, my God. That's what I'm talking about.
Rodney.
Something like that.
Rodney. Have you said that you're a longtime listener.
Right.
Have you ever heard me talk about DK Metcalf?
Have I? I don't know. I only can listen to you for about 45 minutes or so. I don't know. I can't speak honestly on that. Coach.
Okay, because I will. I have talked about DK quite a number of times. I will do the short version here.
Okay.
DK Metcalf is 6'4". He does not play like it. He is not a big, strong receiver in the way that he presents on paper. He's just not. Okay. He is very similar to Terry in his skill set. Again, DK Metcalf is not a bad football player. He is absolutely not what they need because they have already spent money at that position with Debo and with Terry. They do not, it's a duplicate skill set in what Terry has. I know the idea of DK is nice, but he just does not play with the size, and he has a very limited route tree. He's not a good route runner. He actually doesn't attack the middle of the field very much. And there are a bunch of other options that I would rather have. Like if you told me DK Metcalf was free, okay, now I'd consider him. But especially when you add in the fact that he's also been kind of a headache in Seattle, I would not touch DK Metcalf for the Washington Commanders with a 10-foot pole.
Okay.
That was the calm version of my DK Metcalf take.
Right. Well, that was a good version, man. I mean, I'm not going to say you're wrong, but I mean, just the thought of having a big, strong, fast receiver out there with the rest of the guys, that kind of excites me. But maybe DK is not the guy.
Right. And I think that is a good place to leave it, Rodney. I appreciate the call. Thank you. And I 100% agree that a big, fast receiver, or frankly, a big or a fast receiver would be a great compliment. Can you get a guy that can play big? Like Noah Brown is only 6'2", but he plays bigger than that. He plays bigger than DK. He will body guys, and which is why he drew so many pass interference penalties last year. DK, he can run goes, which is useful for sure. He can run digs, which is useful for sure. But you need guys that can attack in other ways. And even a De'Ami Brown had a more complicated route tree. Now, am I going to sit here and tell you that De'Ami Brown's a better player than DK Metcalf? Hell no. I'm not trying to lie to y'all to make a point. That's not how I do this show. That's not the analysis that we do. We're not a hot take business. But if you tell me I can get De'Ami at $5 million or DK at 18, which is his current number, and he wants more than that, I'm taking De'Ami at 5 all day. Now, again, De'Ami might cost you 10 or 15, so I'm not saying that De'Ami is necessarily the answer, but there are enough receivers out there that you can get at a bargain price that are not the headache, that are better complementary skill sets, that leave you enough room in the receiver room. Because here's the other thing, too. What if Luke blossoms in year 2? What if they draft a guy in the 3rd round that all of a sudden is good, or the 2nd round, or maybe even the 1st round that's good, and they're like, that's the guy we actually want as a starter? Have you pay DK, you don't have room for that guy to grow. If you pay someone $10 million or $8 million, let's say I'll pick a name that's been popular, Darius Slayton from the Giants. Let's say it's Slayton, Debo, Luke, Terry, and draft pick are your main guys. And let's say draft pick comes out at training camp and it's like, oh, Adam did it again. He got it. He got us one. Moving Darius Slayton down to wide receiver 4 on the depth chart, not hard. Doing that to DK Metcalf, problem. Not a good use of resources. Oh, God. Are we really going to... I'm going to wait to see what the next call is. I'm not taking a million DK calls. I have an unbelievable amount of things that I'd rather do with my time. And with all of the rest of you that are already understand who DK Metcalf is as a player, then take a million DK calls. I'll take one more. Tony, Aries Tony, what do you want to say about DK Metcalf?
All thing I'm saying about that, Craig, he'd be a hell of a weapon when we get in the red zone because, as you can see, sometimes we struggled when we got in the red zone last year. The only thing we was using is Zach Ertz and somebody else that might got open. To me, our receivers wasn't getting open in the red zone. So if you get somebody of a DK Metcalf, it's somebody upside and height.
How many times... Guys, how many times do I have to tell you that DK doesn't play like he's 6'4"?
No. I'm saying not if not him. I'm saying somebody.
No, I know, but then why do you bring up DK?
Craig, I'm not arguing with you. It's just my opinion, dude. That's all I'm saying, man. I'm saying it does not have to be DK. I want a tall receiver that we can have some threat. We haven't had no receiver like that since Cam Sims. Every time we was trying to get in the red zone, we had to either run it or rely on Zach Ertz. We need a tall weapon that we can get a PI or he can go up and get a 50-50 ball, man. We never had that.
I mean, Terry's pretty good at the 50-50 thing. And he's also extremely dangerous on the fade slant combo, which is the number one thing that you want in a receiver from the outside. Because if you fade the slant, no pun intended, then you have the fade. If you block the fade, then you're giving up the slant. Like, that's the whole deal. Like, Terry's actually pretty good at that. What you actually want in the red zone is someone who's quick.
Right. But let me say this now. Now, the acquisition of Debo, hopefully that will take some of the double team off of Terry or, focus off of Terry or somebody going to be open. But
of course,
once again, all I'm saying, it'd be nice to have some receiver of height, and I'm not saying DK Metcalf.
Okay,
a receiver of height. Okay,
someone who is tall and plays tall. All right, Tony, thanks for the call. I still don't know why Tony started with DK Metcalf, then to say if it's not DK, you can just be like, since DK Metcalf doesn't play like he's 6'4", who are some of the other guys? There aren't a lot of 6'4", 6'5" dudes walking around. There are a couple in this draft that are interesting. There's a kid, I'm totally forgetting his name. Hold on. Receiver, Tennessee, 6'5", 2025 NFL draft. He is named Dante Thornton. He's interesting. I was hearing Dane Brugler talk about him today. Like, he's a one-trick pony who his one trick is he's 6'5" and he gets vertical. That I'm interested in because he had 10 targets in 2024 where he was throwing the ball 20-plus air yards down the field. Anthony, guess how many he caught out of 10?
All 10.
No, that would be insane.
Oh, all right.
But he did catch 7.
7.
Yeah. That's pretty major. So he's probably like a wide receiver type 4 type of guy, at least to start. But like, if that's your one trick, sick. Sign me up for that. So there are some guys in the draft, and like if you can go get fade balls in the red zone, sick. But like I do think that fades. Fades are good in the red zone because space is limited, and the one place you can expand space is up. That's the only way to create more space down there. But operating with precision is arguably more important. And so just being like, I don't know, we got a big guy. Like, it can be a little bit overrated. Or like, could a guy like Sinnott go do that? Hey man, you're supposed to be big, tall, and strong. Go be big, tall, and strong. And especially if it's on a safety or a linebacker. All right, more of your calls next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So the question is this, just to be clear. Who would you like to see the Commanders pursue in free agency? And what this has turned into is Receiver Fest 2025. And I would just like to say that we played for you earlier in the radio show, and in your podcast feed, it will be tomorrow morning, a long discussion on the receivers that became available today with Logan Paulson that concluded with old Professor Paulson saying, basically, don't expect them to do a whole lot. Because when you look at the rest of free agency and where you could spend money, there are other positions that are worth it. There are some guys that are pretty intriguing at other spots. And for whatever reason, everyone's obsessed with receiver. And I get it. They need help at receiver, and they just flat out need receivers. They now have Debo, Terry, and Luke, and that's it. So they will certainly sign guys. But the obsession with receiver is somewhere between hilarious and disheartening, considering there's definitely other stuff we probably would be smarter to talk about. But here we go, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Chris. Chris, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey there, Craig. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for calling.
I'll try not to contribute to Receiver Fest, but kind of new and well to your show. But anyway, I just wanted to say I missed you because you really. I'm a baseball guy mainly, but Jay Gruden was on with Grant and Danny the other day, and he talked about the necessity for someone vertical. Anthony asked me when he was screening me that about who. I don't know who, but Logan is the greatest, and you tipped on it, but you're going to pay that. Sounds like you'll pay that off tomorrow with the rest of that part. That's always wonderful. That's must listen for me.
Well, I appreciate that. And I do think, like, the anybody with speed is a more interesting discussion because of like what does that look like and with a price point than like we must get the top of the market receiver. We need fast, so we have to go get DK Metcalf. It's like, I don't know that those two pieces go together.
That. You and Logan answered that. No, I got it. So I'm in on that. I like your assessment of him and Lockett and who was the third guy? I can't
Kirk,
remember.
yeah.
Kirk, yeah, you answered that. So but I'm just putting all the things I listen to on the shows, and it sounds like, but that's the end of my vertical. I just wanted to also say that I did miss you because I had that was one of my questions. I wasn't calling to recommend anyone on the vertical thing. I'm just anticipating what Logan and you came up with.
Yeah. So, Chris, thanks for the call. I appreciate you listening to everything.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, fire away, and then I do want to actually throw out a couple of names on the vertical stuff. But go ahead, ask me other questions, then we can do the old hang up and listen.
Okay, I'm like I said, I'm baseball, but you're very good at basketball. And believe it or not, I've been listening to more Wizards than I ever have, only because of the rookies between Bub Carrington and Keyshawn George, however you want to. And my favorite so far is Keyshawn George. I know in baseball and other sports they have WAR, like or plus minuses on how they play on the floor, and I think from what I'm listening to and hearing, it looks like Keyshawn's kind of being the best performer, and he's turning into one of my favorites. And if you want something funny, it was when you were gone last week, Doc with Anthony asked Anthony how that went when they shared the microphones. That was pretty cool. Those guys are good. I like your show, and I'll keep listening.
All right, Chris, thanks. And yeah, Keyshawn's having a fantastic season for sure, and I think the Wizards are very, very pleased with the pick they made at the end of the first round. But on the speed receiver front, there's actually a couple of interesting names. I mean, Slayton's the one that comes up a lot. Hollywood Brown is a free agent. I don't think that's a guy that they would be interested in, but I'm also not entirely sure that they wouldn't be, depending on kind of who he is as a guy, as a teammate. He's had a bunch of injuries, but like he is crazy fast. And his vertical speed could be like, hey, if he's our wide receiver 2, that's a lot. If he's cheap and he's wide receiver 4, I get on board with that Hollywood Brown signing. Obviously Diami, Christian Kirk, those guys are in the mix. Kirk's more of a slot guy, but could play outside, and could be in a rotation. And then on down the list, as I scroll here on NFL.com's top 101 list, like Elijah Moore is probably more of a slot guy, but he's only 25 years old, and so he's an interesting guy. Obviously Keenan Allen is an outside guy, not speed, but route running, precision, that kind of thing. So those are some of the guys to definitely watch for. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is a free agent. Josh Palmer, bigger body, about 6'2", probably won't cost you very much, but he's only 25. So there's some interesting names down the list on the receiver front that we probably should, instead of starting at the top and scrolling down on these lists, in some ways it's smarter to start at the bottom and scroll up. Let's go to Terrell in Baltimore. Terrell, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Craig? I got in the truck late, man, so I didn't realize this was just like a receiver thing, because I would have been like Christian Kirk or maybe Godwin.
It's not supposed to be just a receiver thing, but it turned into a receiver thing.
Yeah, so I'm thinking with the Debo trade, that's pretty good. Not to say that the offense is set, but like, okay, all right, maybe I'll get away from wide receiver. I wanted to look at Puna Ford, I think is his name, from San Diego. As from the Chargers, as a defensive tackle. I was like, just looking up free agents, he looks like he's a pretty solid guy, especially if we lose John Allen, that he would be a good guy to go up against with Deron Payne in the middle to kind of, it seems like he's a pretty good pass rusher and run stopper. So I was like, hey, I'd rather, if I'm looking at free agents, maybe look at somebody like him. If we do lose John Bates, then Mo Alley Cox from the Colts as a tight end. And, for me, that was it. Dude, all of the social media stuff I see, every Eagle that gets released, people talk about going and pick them up, like all of those older corners and safeties. I don't want none of them. But I'm thinking of guys that can really fill good positions, that are relatively young and shouldn't cost a lot. And maybe re-signing Diami over like a Hollywood would be cheaper. I don't know, but I'll see what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I don't know who's going to be cheaper. And imagine a year ago when Hollywood signed in Kansas City and everyone's like, oh, God, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl again. Then he basically didn't play all year. I mean, he had a pretty nasty injury and sucks for him. But, like, imagine me saying a year ago, before Diami had the playoff run that he had and the season that he had, that I don't know who's going to make more money, Diami Brown or Hollywood Brown. Like, that's crazy. But, like, that's where we are with this wide receiver market. So I truly do, like, you're on the right track. You have the principle right. Who has upside, maybe a little bit of runway where their player development program, et cetera, the way they use guys can get more out of them than they did in their old spots. And we can maybe get some guys that are around for a couple years on the cheap. And I think and that's not to say that offensive line and edge I wouldn't necessarily spend, but in a lot of these positions, I do think that is probably the right place. So, Terrell, appreciate the call, and I'll get some stats here on Poona Ford to round that out for you. All right, he's good call there. So Poona Ford last year, let's see, his pressure rate. Where did it go? His pressure rate, not super high. He, according to PFF, had 3 sacks on the year, had 25 pressures in 19 total games, 18 plus the wild card, or I should say 17 total games. 17 regular season plus the wild card, so 18 total games. And overall, like, he's 5'11", 310 pounds. Like, he's a big dude who is hopefully going to be able to eat blocks against the run. He had a really good season last year against the run in that Charger defense in year one under what's the name? Jesse Minter. So if that role is good for him, then, like, yeah, that's a guy that I would potentially go after. I would also say that this is a very, very, very deep defensive tackle class in the draft, and so you might be able to get a guy that you like better in the second or third round. But if he costs you $2 million, like, that's potentially a good use of $2 million. Now we're thinking. Let's wrap up with Bird and Ashburn. Bird, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's going on? I was going to say Ronnie Stanley, left tackle, but producer told me that he probably wouldn't be there, so I would go with Alaric Jackson at left tackle to fill in. So you
mean Alaric Jackson?
Inside.
You mean the Rams tackle? The one that just re-signed with the Rams earlier in the week?
Damn, that's messed up. I was out of the country. Sorry, bro.
Hey, there's a lot of news. There's a lot of news to keep up with, Bird. It's hard.
I got one more. How about Cam Robinson from
He's probably the next guy down. He'd be an interesting one. Here's my thing with Bird. I think here's what I'll say. I think you're on the right track. We can work on who the names are. But I do think you're on the right track with the offensive line. So I appreciate the call a lot. And also, Anthony, we might have to clip that. Damn, that's messed up for an open, because that was funny as hell. There's a couple of, like, really interesting guys on the offensive line list that are probably worth talking about that I bet you don't even know exist. Or if you do, like, it's because you're a sicko that's super into this stuff. But, like, there's a dude who is, where is he? What number is he on this list? 17 on this list. Will Freeze, who was one of the most improved young guards in football going into last year. And then he broke his tibia in week 5 and missed out the rest of the season. He's 6'6", 305. He'll be in his 5th year out of Penn State. And he's a good interior lineman. If you tell me they can sign him for $10 million, $8 million, $12 million a year and replace replace Nick Allegretti and move Allegretti to a swing guy, or one of those two guys is playing for Sam Cosmi till he's back, like, that's interesting to me. And then you can keep Coleman outside. But I also don't know that Cam Robinson at age 29, do I want to kick Brandon Coleman out of left tackle for Cam Robinson? Maybe. He was franchised twice. Like, he's above league average as a left tackle. But can Coleman get there within a year? Or would you rather just kick Coleman inside, say, we think Coleman can be an elite left guard, so let's put him there, put Cam Robinson on the outside, and we can keep looking for our franchise left tackle that hopefully is with Jaden for a decade over the course of the next couple of years. So there's some options here that are interesting. You know, Tevin Jenkins in Chicago, He was a high draft pick, didn't really work out, but like the Bears have been kind of a mess offensively. Does Adam look at him and be like, yeah, we can fix him? Like, these are the kinds of guys that I think we would be better served talking about more instead of getting distracted by the freshest receiver that gets cut. That's probably going to be out of their price range, considering they're paying Debo 17.5. They'll probably wind up paying Terry a decent chunk of change on his extension, and they need to get some younger guys in at that receiver position for sure, and some cheaper guys probably than the top of the market guys that are remaining. 301-230-0980 is the phone number, although we are quickly running out of time because Real Things, Real People Said in Real Microphones is actually next ahead of Michigan, Maryland pregame. Terps basketball coming at you at 6 here on the Team 980. one of those days that felt like a sprint, Anthony, because it kind of was.
2 hours it flew, man.
Look, I would love to be a podcaster. That used to do an hour every day. You imagine how easy that would be? No clocks to worry about. If we want to go a little long, go a little short. Podcasters, they got the life, man. Those radio folks are out here grinding. Just not for quite as long today because we got about 4 minutes probably left of the show. Tomorrow on the show, never read the comments. And we really, honestly, Anthony, we have like 3 weeks we haven't done it in a while because I've been traveling and all this kind of stuff. I've been here the previous 2 Tuesdays. So we got a lot of comments we can go back to, and a lot of them are still relevant. I'm fighting with someone in the comments right now, actually, because they called me pretentious. And I was like, instead of dunking on you, what made you say that? Like, what? And he also left like a bunch of other comments that were, this guy's clearly.
Was this today?
It's been over the last like week. He's just like being a jerk, like a truly rude individual. And what I'm trying to do some days is like say, hey, I'm a human being. You're a human being. Let's talk about it. And instead, he's just being an internet jerk. And so I might have to switch strategies and light him on fire.
Uh-oh, Petty Craig coming out?
I mean, that's one way to go about it. But I don't want to do that. I'd like to live in a better world, Anthony, is what I really, on the largesse, would like to say. I'd like to live in a better world.
I hear you.
Trying my best. Sometimes you'll test my patience. Certain topics really test my patience. Like when you insist that DK Metcalf is a big physical receiver.
I feel like there's going to be somebody that puts together a compilation of DK Metcalf being physical and
it'll be 45 seconds long.
And they will at you.
Go for it. 6 years. How many plays can you find?
I don't know.
No, him fighting people when he loses his mind doesn't count. That's tomorrow on the show. What else we got tomorrow? I mean, who knows what kind of we thought we were in trouble today, and then 78 NFL news items broke.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm expecting the Commanders to get in on the signings.
I kind of am too. I'm like, how much longer we got to wait for like?
Or is it going to be a Friday thing, where everybody just wants to dump everything on Friday?
Our luck, it's going to be at 6:05 on Friday, because we're till 6 o'clock on Friday as well.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Also,
so let's not do that. If it is, I would go live on YouTube probably because I would still be sitting in the chair that I would do that from. We got some funny real things. Let's get one in real quick. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for real things, real people said in real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
You know, kids say the darndest things, and then sometimes adults say the darndest things back. Nikola Jokic is working a basketball camp, and the kids had one request. Dunk.
I can't dunk it, guys. Did you see me play? I never dunk. Did you see me dunk? I never dunk.
That thud you heard was Jokic intentionally giving how would you describe it? Like it's a wedgie, creating a wedgie.
Yep.
Where he just slams the ball into the gap there. That's our show. We'll see you tomorrow.